This episode of the Gamerheads podcast is brought to you by Seven Bridges Premium Gourmet Yum Yum Sauce. Enhance every bite with our savory blends of flavors, perfect for meats, vegetables, and crispy treats. Whether you're dipping, drizzling, marinating, grilling, roasting, or snacking, Seven Bridges Yum Yum Sauce takes your culinary experience to the next level. Get yours today and make every meal a gourmet delight. Hey, just a quick editorial note. This episode with Jill was recorded prior to our knowledge of GameStop closing Game Informer. If we knew then what we know now, I'm sure we would have talked a lot more about that topic. So anyway, with that being said, enjoy this episode.
Hi, I'm Celia Schilling from Yacht Club Games.
Hey, this is James from Megacat Studios.
Hey, this is Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon, from Reignite, Screen Snark, and the Fun and Games podcast.
This is Stephanie from the Boss Rush podcast and the Boss Rush Network.
Hey, this is Mark and Keon from Bunte Avond.
Hey, this is Sebastian with the ProNerdReport.com and the Single Player Experience podcast.
Hi, this is Chris.
Mike.
And Garrett from Daylight Basement Studio.
Hey, this is Baron J67 from Level 1 Gaming.
Hey, this is Todd Mitchell from Code Right Play.
Salutations, this is Mike Carroll from Stroll Art.
Hey, this is Jeff Moonen from Fun and Games Podcast.
What's good, y'all? This is Adam from Respawn Aimfire.
Hey, this is Patrick from the Backlog Odyssey.
Hey, this is Rune from Runic Codes.
Hi, this is Andrew from Spalato Bros.
Hi, everyone. Jill Grodt here from the Indie Informer.
Hello, this is the Crypt Master. And you're listening to Roger you're listening to Roger on the Gamerheads podcast.
And welcome to another episode of the Gamerheads podcast. My name is Roger. Along with me this week is not Mike. It's not Phil. No, we have Jill, the Indie Informer. Welcome to the show. Yeah,
I'm sorry I could be neither of those people. The last time I came on, I think we insinuated that I murdered.
Yeah,
someone.
I think that's. So... I think that was a thing. That was a thing.
I'm slowly getting through the entire cast.
Wait, what? What does it mean next? Wait, what? I'm the only one left. Oh man, it's pretty soon. It's supposed to be Jill Grodt, the Indie Informer and Gamerheads. Anyway,
host.
Yeah, I will tell you. I don't know if you'd probably do one show. You'd be like, I don't want this gig anymore. I'm done. Well, Jill, welcome to the show. I know you've been like, I don't know, what is this? 510
62.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know, we lost track after 7, I think. But briefly, if you want to tell people a little bit about yourself in case this is the first time they're ever listening to the Gamerheads podcast.
If this is the first time, you've made a good decision. Welcome to the Gamerheads podcast, where I will soon be host. My name is Jill Grodt. I run the Indie Informer. If that name sounds slightly like Game Informer, that is because I did work at Game Informer until the not even the most recent, but one of the layoffs happened, unfortunate. And I took off to start a new website that is entirely focused on indie games. And therefore, if you are interested in indie games and you want to know more about what's happening, check out any coverage for previews, reviews, or just my impressions on games, you can head over to theindieinformer.com.
Yeah. And Jill, you are killing it when it comes to because this is your second podcast.
A lot of things
besides just co-host on a podcast. But I mean, like, this is your second podcast today, but I mean, you have your own podcast. You host with other people. I shouldn't say your own.
I host with it. It is a collaborative effort between four major indie creators who are lovely and do a lot of work to make me look good.
Well, I love the podcast, and
I like it too. It's a lot of fun.
But yeah, you're super busy. So I want to first of all thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be on the show once again.
Background for anybody who doesn't know, I was 10 minutes late to this podcast and he is now thanking me, but
I think I gave you a hard time before. I was joking. But it's awesome to have you here. And and the fun thing is, like, you're always so gracious to come back, and I don't know why.
It's a lot of fun.
Well, I appreciate
it. That's a big part of why you go off and do your own thing, right? Is because you want to do the things that interest you. So if you had been a terrible person,
get out of here. Get out of here.
Don't have to work with these people again,
But one of the cool things, and we'll talk about PAX here in a little bit, but I am going to drop this right here because it's early on in the podcast and people should pay attention to this. We are on a team in a panel at PAX.
Woo!
How cool is that?
It's August 30th at 9 p.m. Pacific time.
That's going to be a problem. I'm just going to tell you that because
that's going to be really late.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm going to be you're going to have to carry the team. I'm just going to tell you.
It's going to be like when an anime character has all of the like heavy things around their arms and legs. We can't let you get too far ahead.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I'm going to be your weight. That's what I'm going to be. I'm going to just drag you down. That's what
this is going to be fun. I imagined literally you like around my arm.
Come on, Riker, let's go.
You've got this.
But I'm not going to spoil this because I want people to see what we.
Yes, the grand reveal.
But it should be here August 12th.
Okay, I'm excited.
So I'll show you. I'll take a picture when we get it.
Okay,
and then I'll bring it. But this
is great content. No one knows what we're talking about. But
this is like the best podcast content you could ever listen to. Like,
you want to give people a little intrigue,
This is gonna be the best because nobody's gonna get this because this is all audio. But Jill, that too,
yes,
it's gonna be awesome.
Oh
yeah.
Oh, this is gonna be great.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. I feel like we should have a discussion about how the grand reveal happens because I think it should be hidden until the moment of reveal.
It should be. We should, yes, for sure. For sure. For sure. If I had enough time, I would also then the flip it up,
I'm gonna do the full
Yeah, exactly. Like wow, what?
Anybody who's watching this, when you watch the panel, this will all make sense.
Yeah, August 30th, 9 p.m. Pacific time, and I think like it's on one of the PAX channels, right? Like I don't know, they have like
they stream
channels,
a couple,
yeah.
Just put in the correct answer here.
And that's what one last thing I'll say about that was really cool is that we are on their special guests page as well.
Yeah, we're on the PAX page. And I was like looking through and I saw my big old face. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Well, I saw me and I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm right. If you look at the website, not the mobile, but if you look at the website, you have Phil Spencer, Roger Riker.
Yeah. It's good company.
It's alphabetical order, but it's still pretty cool.
It's in order of importance, Roger. It's in order of importance.
Okay, yeah, sure. But yeah, it's cool. That's very cool. I'm excited about that. So I should go through some business before we jump into everything. Welcome to our patrons. Jill, you're a patron of Gamerheads on Patreon.
I am indeed.
And Jill and Matt, thank you so much for Jill and Matt and Sarah, I should mention. Thank you so much for supporting Gamerheads. If you, listener, want to support the Gamerheads podcast, you can as well for as low as $3 a month. You can join the Gamerheads Nation. Just click on the link in the show notes and you can join our Patreon. Also, just want to give a shout out. Jill, are you a fan of Yum Yum sauce? Do you like Yum Yum sauce?
I have no idea what Yum Yum sauce is. It makes me think of, speaking of PAX, Dinar's Yum Yum Hut. It's the first thing I thought of. So tell me about Yum Yum sauce.
Oh my gosh.
I don't know what this is. I've never even heard of it.
It's a tangy, it's usually like, okay, so Seven Bridges Yum Yum sauce is one of our sponsors, right? And and we got a bottle of it. I got a bottle of it. And it's so good. It's like a tangy sauce. Usually like you find it typically on like sushi and stuff like that, but I've been putting on rice or chicken, hamburgers. I've been putting on hamburgers. It's very yummy. and
so it's not an ironic name.
no, it's not. No, it'd be really weird if it was like it's not very good. It's yum yum sauce.
You wouldn't have a sponsor for too long.
That's true. That's true. But Jill, I can probably hook you up with a bottle of Seven Bridges yum yum sauce if you're interested.
Okay.
So
I've never been more interested in anything in my life, Roger.
Listeners, you as well can go to the link in our show notes and check out Seven Bridges yum yum sauce. It's very yummy. So there, go check that out. All right, now we got all of those things out of that's like our legal stuff that we have to get out of the way. Now we can talk about the podcast we're actually talking about this week. So we're gonna cover a couple things. We're gonna talk about the best indie games of 2024 so far, and we're gonna talk about PAX as well and what we're most looking forward to. But yeah, we're gonna start with the best indie games of 2024 so far. If I had like the soundboard again, I would have a really cool sound there, but it's gone. They took that away from me.
Reverb.
Yeah, they took that away.
Couldn't be trusted.
Yeah.
With it. So okay, before we jump in, do we count like early access, or are we waiting for just
that's a good
fully
question.
Released?
I think we can call we'll just put an asterisk next to those things. Like, we'll say it's an early access, but because
of course there are a couple of things that come to mind when you think about what's in early access in indie. Yeah. So maybe I will skip those. Okay.
I have my list, but to tell you the truth, I'm not 100% sure they're not in early access, so they might be. But I would have to, when I say them, you'll be like, oh, that's an early access. Get rid of that, Roger. And then I'll say, oh.
Get out of there, Roger.
I'm so sorry.
No, I'll let you have it. No, I think there were just so many good games out.
I know. And this is going to make it even more difficult. Jill, I'm going to limit you to 5.
Okay. That's the hard part, is limiting myself. When Roger first shot it through, he was like, "Do you think 5?" I'm like, I could do 15.
I'll let you start. We'll go round robin, even though there's only 2 of us. We'll just go back and forth, I guess. So I'll start you. Okay. And this is for me. It's in no particular order for me. But I don't know if you have an order, but I just have no particular order. So
no, I don't have an order. I think the first one that I really want to shout out is 9 Souls.
Oh yeah,
from Red Candle Games.
I have not played that yet.
It's really good. I just got to the part with zombies.
Okay.
So I don't know if it's a Roger game.
Wait, is it scary?
I mean, here's the thing. Red Candle Games, for anyone who doesn't know, has a horror background. They created Devotion, which a lot of people will know from getting banned from Steam because of it. It's the game that was banned because it made reference to, or supposedly made reference to, the Chinese president. And connecting it to Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, interesting.
Which is freaking hilarious, by the way.
Oh, wow. I have that game.
You can look up all of this information. Yeah, and you can't get it on Steam anymore. Wow. You actually have to go to the Red Candles game website in order to play it because it was banned from China. And that the creators are from Taiwan. So it's this whole political back and forth. So there is a lot of interesting background behind the creators of this game. But they have a really interesting background in horror. So getting to see that pop up in this game, which is not a horror game, it is a really slick, really beautiful Souls-esque, Metroidvania-esque game.
Okay, Souls.
Roger's just like,
it wasn't the horror; it would be the Souls-like. So,
yeah, no, it is so good though.
Okay.
If that's the kind of game that speaks to you, this is a game you should be playing. If you are a person who is waiting for Silksong, this is the game you should be playing because it is they don't have any right, having been a first person horror game that's like a walking sim that you're just kind of plodding along slowly and scarily, to this really beautiful fluid, all the game is about deflection, unlike a lot of other action games which are just hit. So it's a lot of thinking and strategizing about how you're using your abilities. which is a really cool, and they do it so well, and they don't have any right to do it as well as they're doing, because this is a completely different genre for the creators. It is a completely different artistic style. It is sort of a hand-drawn 2D anime-esque look to it, and it's just gorgeous. And I love this game so much. I haven't even it is tough. It is so tough. You can see I have done a couple of gameplay sessions on streams, and you can see how tough the game really gets. So I am still unfinished with it, and I'm still trying, and it's a real shame that the game hit sort of in the middle of, I think, Summer Game Fest, if I remember correctly. And the keys did not go out ahead of time. So with this kind of perfect storm, unfortunately, that means a lot of people didn't play it one, or didn't play it to a point where they felt like they could cover it. So like a lot of people, I think, are missing out on this fantastic, one of the best games of this year, because of how like the business of this stuff kind of works. And that's a real shame, because it deserves to have everybody being like, you know, who cares about Silksong? Let's play Nine Souls.
Yeah. It's funny that one thing I love about indie games is the fact that these studios take risks like that. And the fact that, you know, this studio, I think of even like Mighty Yell, like how different all their games are, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about indie studios, because of the fact that they take risks and they're like, well, we're going to try this. We're going to do something completely different. And it boggles my mind. It boggles my mind that they do that, because like, and I actually talked to Dave from Mighty Yell, and I mentioned that in one of my interviews with him. I said, it's crazy to me to think that you go from like, this is when A Night in the Attic came out. You know, they went from a Big Con, which was like an adventure game, to a VR game, like
very 90s.
Yeah, very 90s to a VR game. Like that's a VR puzzle game. Like so different, right? But I think it's their ability to think outside the box and try to do things and, you know, take risks. And that's what makes the indie scene so amazing. So do I have to play this game? Should I play this game?
From your reaction to the genres and the horror elements, I think everyone should play this game. But if that doesn't feel like up your alley, then maybe just watch people play it and see, get an idea.
Okay. All right.
I'll go check it out.
Where can I go watch your stream?
You can go check it out at theindieinformer.com. Just type in Nine Souls. It's
there you go.
NINESOLS.
Okay.
Souls, like a
Souls.
sun.
Okay. All right. For me, okay, I'm gonna call a audible here, because I don't know if this game came out this year. I don't remember. Did El Paso Elsewhere come out this year, or was that last year?
I feel like that was last
I think so too.
year,
I think so
but like
too.
this is. Oh, but the Strange Scaffold has other games that have popped out this year. And I think another one coming up in a couple of weeks that's going to be in this list the next time you make it.
Yeah. I wasn't sure, so but I'll mention this game then. Bahnsen Knights.
Okay.
So this is one of those. I heard Janet talk about this on your last episode of your podcast. This is one of those pixel pulp games.
Yes.
And now there's a fourth one coming out, but this is the third one in the series. And in this game, you are a undercover cop. And I don't say cop, maybe FBI. They don't really say, but you're undercover, and you're going into this cult, and that's this Bahnsen Knights group.
Like you do.
Like you do. And they it's a religious cult, and they believe in that they can scare away tornadoes with their driving of their cars in certain formations, and you're a driver in one of these cars. So there's a lot of like visual novel aspects to it, but then there's moments where it's just like intense moments where you have to like drive the car in a dodge tornadoes and other weird stuff coming at you. It's crazy. And then there's moments where like you're in this like bar area where all the knights hang out, and you have to like act quickly to uncover certain things and figure out like certain clues. And I was very proud of myself because I did get the best ending, and I was very happy with that.
Oh, that's good. Is there a good ending when you've got cults that are driving cars against tornadoes?
There is.
Huh.
Oh, yeah. I don't want to spoil for anybody, but there's also probably bad endings too. I did die along the way, so then my game ended. But it's really good. The writing is really good. The art is very good. It's all this pixelated, like 16-bit type looking, right? But it looks like old like PC games, you know?
Yeah, it has that real element of like it makes it feel old somehow, but the vibrancy of it keeps it from looking old. Like it's a really cool art style.
And the one thing that just really stood out for me too is the colors that they used. Like in this one, they used a lot of reds and a lot of purples and like deep reds and deep purples, which just made you feel uneasy, like going through the game. And then in the end, I'm not going to spoil it, but like the colors are vibrant and made me feel better about like what happened. Right. So
that's good.
But that one's really good. And I haven't played the other. I know that Phil has played Mothman and Varney Lake. I think that's the other one, right?
Yeah. Varney Lake.
He's played both of those. So, and he's really loved them. So I need to go back and play those other two. So
all of them very, very good.
Yeah. All right. That was mine. What's your next game on this list?
Okay. I'm looking through my list and I'm like, how do I cut everything down? I think I have to go with the one that's going to be continuously on top lists until the end of the year, and that's Balatro.
Yeah.
Balatro,
me too.
Absolutely took the world by storm. Even people who are not big indie fans got into this game and can't stop playing it. It's one of those games that I'm like, I can't pick it back up or else I'll start again. I'll have to do it.
Yeah.
And it's one of my greatest accomplishments this year that I managed on stream to win a game of Balatro, and now no one can like take that away from me. It is such a prime example of a creator finding a very simple idea and just making it the best possible version. That it doesn't need to be all these genres put together and crazy art and huge production value. It's like you can't put this game down. It is so much fun. For anyone who has not played, go and play Balatro because it's amazing. But it is a game in the form of a poker game where you start out with normal kind of poker rules, but as you go on, you get you pick up different cards like jokers that change the rules of how things are scored and how things are played and how things exist in the world, and they start giving different boosts and different qualities to your cards, and the more that starts happening, the more strategy you can build around. Okay, so now I have a card that allows me to make a straight out of 4 cards instead of 5. So now I'm going to go for cards that are straights, and now I want to pick up cards that give more points if you play like a straight in your hand, so that you continue to get more and more. And then you do have every round you have like a boss battle, which does something ridiculous. And I really recently, like the last time I played, found a joker that negates the boss. And I'm like, I love this joker. I am never putting this joker down. It doesn't do anything else. And like during any of the other like rounds of poker, you are like, maybe I should have something that helps scoring. But then when you get to the boss, it's just so easy to blow through it. You're like, nope, this is worth it. I'm never getting rid of this card.
It really helps with that one boss. I can't remember the name of it, but where you can only play one hand.
Yeah.
I hate that boss.
I actually really like that boss.
You do?
Because my strategies usually turn into only play one kind of hand anyway. I think the ones that are hardest for me are things that these cards are no longer, you cannot use them. Especially if I have I had a really bad situation where I had the cards that let you count any red card as the same thing.
Yeah.
So I had been getting rid of black cards and all of my jokers were about scoring for those cards. And then I came up against a boss that was like, no diamonds count. And I was like, none of my cards can score. So I lost immediately.
Yeah. I usually, I've lucked out when I'll run into those bosses early where it says like none of the hearts or diamonds or whatever can score. And then I'll be like, cool, I won't run into that boss again. And then I just, stack up on the red cards or whatever the case is, right? So
but like that's why this game should be in top lists, because anybody who's played it has those sort of fond memories, and you can commiserate is maybe a good word with everyone else who's run into this. And it is so ridiculously hard to stop playing because it's such a good just one more round. That one didn't count. I barely got past the first round, or like I would have done really well if I'd just done this. So like you just keep playing and playing and playing.
Yeah. I love that game. That's also on my list. So I figured if it's one of the games that's on our list, then we can drop that game and pick a different game.
Ooh,
so
okay.
this will, I think this next game is probably on your list as well. So then
ready.
you can probably drop it off your list. For me, the next game I'm talking about is Dungeons of Hinterberg.
Yeah, that's on the list.
I love that game. I love the art in this game. The premise is like interesting, where you're going to this town for like a vacation, and you're gonna go like go adventuring in this. It's like an amusement park kind of thing. Like that's what it feels like, right?
Yeah.
Like the mayor knows, like, oh yeah, like this is what we're known for now. Like you go into this dungeon.
Like it's not even that the mayor knows. It's like the mayor is like that is their main strategy for getting people to this town.
Yeah.
It's like I've spoken with the developers, and I've always loved this game since it was first revealed. It is such a interesting comment on commercialism and like how the modern world works and functions, and in some cases is extremely bizarre. But the basic idea of Dungeons of Hinterberg is in this town, Hinterberg. I think it was like 7 years ago or something in the game lore. Suddenly these dungeons just appeared out of nowhere. Magic, monsters, real live dungeons just appeared. And so of course they became a tourist attraction.
Yeah. As they should,
so people,
right? I mean,
yeah. And I asked the developers if they thought in the real world, if like in my backyard a dungeon popped up, do you think people would be interested in going? They're like, well, yeah. I mean, you think about the amount of people, like they likened it to space tourism and how billionaires are kind of throttling that and would be the first one sort of involved, and money would be involved in that somehow. But they also likened it to like just people who are thrill seekers in real life, people who go off and do wild things that like I would never ever try to do in my life. Like of course people are going to be excited and interested to live out this adventure. So it is one half dungeon delving, getting magical powers, finding out puzzles, getting past environmental blockades, fighting bad guys, and then one half social sim. You are going around and like making friends and having a good vacation.
Well, that's the thing I love about this, because there's a deeper story in there where this is, the main character is somebody who works at a law firm, right? Is that what she does?
Yes.
And
yes.
she feels like she needs to do this to prove to herself that she can do this, and like kind of get away from her everyday life, which is so fascinating, right? Like, and then the first dungeon, I don't think this is a spoiler because it's like right away in the game. It's like your tutorial dungeon, but the first dungeon, like something bad happens, like this earthquake happens, and she gets knocked out, and they take her to safety, and the mayor's like, oh, everything's fine, don't worry about it, it's okay, like, you know, we're fine. And she questions if she should continue to do this at that point. She's like, should I just go back? And she's like, no, I have to press on, right? And I just think that's really interesting. And again, talking about the tourism thing, right? Like, there's something going on here that's unsettling, and it's dangerous. And yet people like flock to this city and be like, oh, like, hey, you're an adventurer. Oh, great, cool. And then
and in fact, in the first area that because there are 4 overworlds with 25 dungeons total scattered throughout. In the first overworld, there's Kittyland, which implies that so many people are bringing their children to these dungeons that they had to have a place to put them. I love that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good game. And it's also like when you streamed it, I thought like it was interesting because you said that people likened it to like Zelda games. And and I would say because I think there's puzzles in the game. So
right. Yeah, I don't see the connection that heavily. Like a lot of people use it, I think probably for SEO.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there.
That's why I threw it out here.
Maybe if you connect it to like Breath of the Wild, like shrines.
Yeah.
A lot of people connect it to Persona because of the like going into dungeons and then socializing sort of things. But yeah, it is. I think what sets it apart though is there is a very interesting meditation on reality, the worlds that we come from, the commercialism of life, greed, and what that means to make magic a monetary commodity for people, and then what makes a good vacation, like looking into yourself and seeing like, is it absurd that I am waking up every day? Is it equally absurd that I am on this adventure like vacation as it is absurd to wake up every day to go to a grinding job that I hate for the rest of my life, and that is what my life is about. Like there is a lot of very interesting meditation on that topic, which gets really deep, and I don't know how far you are into the game, but it gets the climax of the story actually really pulls you as a person apart with a choice that you have to make between commercialism, but at the same time, like real life people who really have to make a living have to, like, this tourism is propping up the security of a lot of people in this town versus the things that you're talking about. Like, is this safe? Is this something we should allow to happen? And it's like a really interesting conundrum when you get to one particular part. I think after that climax, the decision is sort of like there is sort of a correct answer. But yeah, I just really love the moments where, like, at a scenic spot in one of the overworlds, like 4 of the overworlds, you've got like 5 different scenic spots in each overworld. You can choose to just, instead of going to a dungeon, just sit down and sit with your thoughts. And I think those are some of my favorite parts of this game.
Yeah. I'm not that far, as you mentioned. But I do love this game. It's very good. It's very fun. So that was my next pick. What's your is this number 3 now? I think we're on the third pick.
I think we're on 3. I have to shout out Lorelei and the Laser Eyes.
Okay, I've not played it yet. I have it.
Oh, it's so
but I need
good.
to play. And the phenomenon of all these people taking notes and sharing, like, that they're taking all these notes.
If you look at people's notebooks, they look insane. You look like you're planning a murder. Like, you don't want anyone to look, but at the same time, you're just like, if you have another person who has played and you show them your notebook, they will recognize 100% where you are in the game and what you're doing, what you're trying to figure out. It's so much fun. For anyone who does not know, Lorelei and the Laser Eyes is a kind of spiritual successor to like a Silent Hill type game, but there is no horror. There is no combat.
Yeah.
It is puzzles. It is a puzzle game through and through. So you, Lorelei, come to a kind of decrepit old hotel, having been invited by an artist, a fellow artist, you are also an artist, promising his magnum opus, and you're going to be helping create it. But when you walk in, you're kind of perhaps part of what is happening, perhaps a victim of what is happening. And you slowly kind of unravel. It hits so meta so quickly that there's just a lot you can dig in very deep to what might be happening in the game. It's one of those games that's extremely clever. And the note taking is not because the game is so tough that you need to like take notes, but it is spatially a lot easier to write things down than have to like keep it all in your memory. But the game has a really lovely mechanic that anytime you find like a hint or a clue for something in the game, you have it cataloged in the menu immediately. So anytime you come up and you're like, oh, this is a 4-digit number that might help with a combination lock somewhere. And you come and like later on you find a combination in your lock and you're like, oh, what was that number? You don't have to run back to the place and find it. It's literally in your notes. So you just go through and it'll say like door combination lock or whatever, and you're like, okay, that's the number.
Well, why are all these people taking notes then? If it's in your menu, why to take notes?
It's the spatial reasoning sort of thing for me.
Because you're not the only one. I've seen a lot of people posting their pages and pages of notebook.
Pages of just, you look wild. And yeah, it is a game that is it is designed so that you do not have to do that. I think there is just some fun in doing it too. Of like, okay, let me just work this out. I'm going to picture it on a page. And then once you start doing it, then you can't stop and you have your notebook next to you every time.
No, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
It's a great game too for gamers because it plays with gaming past and sort of your expectations of what's going to happen, and play around with you're sure a bad thing's going to happen here, but then you just find a dog to pet, it messes with you.
Am I going to be, is this going to stump me too much that I'm going to get frustrated?
No.
Okay.
No. Okay. It is not. It is one of those games that is brilliant at making it seem like a genius would have to do it, but gives you all of the clues necessary and you just have to put them together. I think if you ever come up to some like a door that you can't open and you don't know how, if you don't immediately know like, oh, I remember that combination, then you've reached a place that you just don't have the answer to yet. And it's okay to go off and do something else. I think one of the hardest things about the intro to this game, it's like the first 15 minutes is a real info dump of like, here's a lot of like books and notes and reading posters and things that populate your menu so that later you can like, oh, I remember reading that. But I fear that people will see that and think, I'm getting all this stuff and I don't know what to do with it. I must be missing something. But that first 15 minutes really is just an info dump. And your first puzzle doesn't start until you go back to the entrance of the hotel. So like essentially you roam all around the hotel and then you come back and you're like, okay, now the game really begins.
Okay.
I'm so excited.
I know. I had to play it. I mean, I have it on the Switch, so I mean, I plan to, when I go to PAX, I plan to play some games outside of the games we're playing at PAX. So I plan to play that.
It plays good on Switch, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, this is one of those games though that I wanted. Unfortunately, our nice TV died. We need to get into one. But I wanted my wife and I to play that game because my wife loves
It's a really
this
good
kind of games. She loves puzzle games.
Yeah. I ended up playing it with my spouse as well. And when you have someone playing with you who is your opposite in like knowledge, like I'm very good at spatial reasoning. I'm very good at hanging on to history and words and kind of little facts and things, whereas my partner is very math oriented. And so it was like anytime we needed anything on either side, one of us was strength in that area.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to, because like she has all of that and I have none of that, so she'll be getting all the answers and I'll be just sitting there saying, I think so.
It's gonna be great.
I think that's right, probably.
Most of the answers are just like so obvious, like but it's like you're gonna overthink it and then you'll figure it out and be like
I'm looking forward to
So
that.
good.
I'm looking forward to that. All right, so for me, this might be on your list as well. So I'm gonna say this next game. I've only started playing it, but I've enjoyed it so far. I've seen a lot of video of it too, and I started playing it. I saw the video. I'm like, I have to play this game. A Ranger is very good.
it is very
There
good.
are times where I was like, I can't figure this puzzle out, and then somehow I figured it out. I'm like, oh, okay, that worked.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
99% of the time, if you can't figure it out, it's because I've forgotten that I can wrap around.
That's the thing. There's moments where I was just like, oh, I'm on the other side of that now. Oh, now this works. I get it. Okay, now I got to pull this over here. Okay, this is working now. So the premise is that you are this child that has special powers or a curse, depending on
how you look at it.
Exactly. And wherever they move, they shift things around. It kind of reminds me of like those games where you'd have like those cars and you had to kind of shuffle things around, or like kind of like a Rubik's Cube in a way, right? Because you're shuffling things and moving things and you have to arrange certain things. And it's
a ranger.
And it's very cute in the beginning because you can see how this power can be disruptive, where somebody's like working on a ladder and then you move the ladder and they fall.
And of course they're mad at you because they've fallen off the ladder. But it's like, I can't help that when I move, the world moves with me.
But yeah, it's very unique. Like I've never played anything quite like this before. And the puzzles are, I think that's one of the things, like, it's interesting how you said like how Lorelei and the Laser Eye, they have all this 15 minutes of like getting all this information, where a Ranger, you're just kind of dumped right in. All right, here you go.
Yep.
Figure it out. Right. And I mean, they do give some tutorial, but it's still.
I mean, but it's a tutorial that's like so minimal.
Yeah.
It starts, the splash screen itself is basically the tutorial, and it's like, this is how you do it. And there you go. Good luck.
Yeah. I thought that was really interesting that, the right away in the beginning, you're just like, okay, you're going to be doing this. This is how this works. But yeah, so I'm not very far in it, but what I've played so far, I really enjoy. And it's a wholesome game. So I like it.
It's wholesome. It's got some just absolutely absurd points to it, but it's also got some real biting commentary on the nature of social media, on the nature of the internet and the disconnection of people who do not go out and see each other, on belonging and feeling like you belong somewhere. And I always love a game that is absurd to show a point, and this game does that quite well. And it's very pretty.
It is very pretty. Yeah, I like it. What's your next game?
I'm going to, where am I? I'm on 4.
Yeah, so number 4.
Now I'm getting down to like, oh no, I have to make choices. I'm going to shout out Magical Delicacy.
Oh, I want to play this game.
Yes, you do. I mean, you want to play this game.
I heard you talking about it. I was like, okay, I have to go play this game. So yeah, tell us about this game.
It's coming out, I think, on the 15th of August. Let me double check. It's already out on Steam, and I play it on Steam Deck. It's not officially verified, I don't think, but it plays very well. And then it is coming to Switch on, let me check the date. Yeah, 15th of August.
Is it on Xbox already? Because I thought I saw it on Xbox Game Pass.
I think it's Game Pass. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can get it on Game Pass. I did play it on Xbox, and there was a weird, I don't know if it was my TV or not, but it felt like there was a weird sort of lag. Maybe that's been updated since I played it, but I really appreciate playing with it on Steam Deck. I think it'd be a really good Switch game. But essentially what this game is a combination, a very intriguing combination of platformer and cooking sim.
I know. I was like, this kind of sounds right up my alley, actually.
Right. It's so good. It is a cozy type game. That follows the main character, who is a witch. And she grew up in the North, where witches are not common. She is weird. She is not made welcome. So on her 21st birthday, she decides to leave her past behind and go to the big city. And the big city just happens to be the weirdest effing city you've ever seen. Because it's literally built on a cliffside. It's kind of San Francisco if you think about it. But its cliff buildingness means that the only way, I don't know how they got past, regulations with this, but like the only way to get from place to place is like jumping from platforms.
Okay.
And like sometimes there are pulley systems and elevators and all sorts of things and ways to get around. Sometimes the platforms don't show up unless it's under moonlight because they're magical. Sometimes you have to get different abilities in order to go to different spaces and get to different places. But my cat is like destroying my chair behind me. So it is intriguing in just the way you get around. But narratively speaking, you get to this new town. Somehow the mayor knows you are coming and drops you off in front of a storefront and says, witches are apparently in this world really great with cooking. Like it is a skill that they're connected with, like the earth and how the ingredients work. So the sort of level 1 untrained witch skill just has an affinity for cooking. So I am given this shop that I have to pay back at some point, but that's kind of vague as to like what actually has to happen. Sort of, but like you don't have to pay interest,
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, it is sort of a Tom Nook situation. But you go inside and you start out like you have a squatter that you have to like, okay, now I have a new roommate. She's just like, I'll let you live here, I guess. And you find out more and more about her and like what her situation is. And she comes from being this like weird, irritant squatter person to like, oh, I'm actually really feeling for you and like what you're going through. And I understand as being a person who left my home because I was not welcome and your situation. And that's such a cool arc. So you've got a lot of really lovely characters who have meaningfully deep, caring, genuine relationships. Not all, like some of them are people you aren't gonna like. Like there's a woman who's just like always mad. She's like always just angry at you. She's like, oh, you gotta shop for free. I worked really hard for all my stuff, and it's like, and you sort of learn more about her and like why she feels like there's a chip on her shoulder. And you learn about all of these people by taking orders and like giving them food and like you do, like great food does, connects you to people and shows who you are. And so there's this really lovely aspect of going out, having someone be like, oh man, I wish I had the stew when I was sick and I was a kid and my mom used to make, and then or my partner is always out to sea and I never get to see them, and I would love to make a special event for them. So unfortunately, though, I'm a frog person and we can only eat certain things. So some of the challenge is you start out with essentially an empty shop. You have a faucet and you have a pot.
Okay.
So the first things you can create are basically just soups and stews. And that's fine because I guess all people need right then are soups and stews right on the menu. You start getting money as you give people more and more the orders that they want. Then you can go down to the blacksmith and they can give you a cutting board. I'm not sure why it's at the blacksmith, but cutting board is one of the first things you'll get. You get an oven, you get more and more intricate sort of things. I think the last thing that I recently got is like an enchanter shrine, essentially, so I can enchant my ingredients.
Oh.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah.
And it gets more and more intricate. So like when you start out, all you have to do is put everything into a pot and cook it. But then as you go on, you get like, okay, this order needs to have something that has been put through the dryer. So like you have sun-dried tomatoes or something, or a juicer so that you have almond milk.
Okay.
So you need something that's been dried. You need almond milk. You need something that's been enchanted. Everything has a flavor. So like some people are like, I want this soup to be sour. But like in order to make soup, you have to have like a creamy element, and sometimes creamy overrides sour. So you have to figure out what ingredients to put in.
Interesting.
But in order to get those ingredients, you have to make money so that you can go out and like get ingredients that are like sour ingredients. So you get more and more complicated and more interesting things. And then on top of that is the platforming kind of Metroidvania element of this game, because going to the blacksmith to get your cutting board or what have you, it's not just a simple like, I'll just walk down the street. It's literally like I have to figure out how to hop correctly to get to my destination. Like I have to physically have the skill to get there.
Oh my gosh.
And on top of that, then there is a deeper narrative of two other witches I come across are feuding for some particular reason, and I have been thrust in the middle of that. So there is a whole nother drama that's going on. So there's a lot of really cool, and you work all of this out like when you help one of the witches for the first time, she gives you a double jump. So now I can access totally new places, new merchants for new ingredients, so I can make more and more things, but also more clients so I can make more money. I start to open up, I am able to open up the shop so that I can just sell things from my shop. So I don't have to have orders directly from people. So I'm just getting passive income, stuff like that.
That's cool.
So it's a really cool, built-in, intricate, heartfelt, cozy, slightly challenging. Like it's not a very hard platformer. Like it's never going to be like pixel perfect, but it is a Metroidvania in the sense that you are barred off from certain places until you get certain abilities, and you don't get those abilities until you meet people and you help certain people. Also, I just like making tea in games, I've decided. So I have like every tea recipe available.
Okay. Is there combat in this game at all? Like when you're platforming around?
No, I don't think so. I have not run into it. I have been playing for a long time.
Yeah.
I think the closest thing you have to like combat is like there are weeds that are thorny. But like you don't have health, and you don't, anytime you like die, like you can fall off a cliff, but you just repopulate back up to the last solid earth you were on. So
it's not punishing that way.
It's not super high stakes.
Okay. That sounds fun. Yeah, I do. That was on my list, and I know you recommended that before because I listened to the In-Console and you talked about that game, and I was like, oh yeah, I got to go play that game too. Cool. What is this number? Is this 4? Did we say? Is that right?
This was 4, I believe.
So my 4th game is a game that, if you listen to this podcast, you will hear the intro by this character, and that is the Cryptmaster. So the Cryptmaster can't pronounce my last name. So then he just says it's Roger's podcast, right? You're listening to Roger. But it's very funny.
That's very funny.
Yeah. But the Cryptmaster is really a unique game. I've never played anything like this before. So it's an RPG dungeon crawler. A lot of influence from Dungeons and Dragons. And if you haven't, I did interview one of the developers of the game, so you should go back and listen to that interview where we talk about the writing of the game and how this game is written, and just like the amount of work that went into thinking through like the different words. So the way it works is you learn words. So you're zombies. Like, so the Cryptmaster is like this demon necromancer, and he brings you back to life. He brings this party of 4 back to life, but you don't remember anything from your past life. You don't remember much of anything. And
it's totally for altruistic reasons.
Yeah, yes, of course. So you have to like learn through typing in words, and you'll get, it's like Wheel of Fortune-esque in that sense, where there's like, like one of the first words you learn as Joro is hit. Right, so it's a HIT, but the whole time you're trying to type in different words and try to figure out what exactly is going on here. And then there's puzzles where you'll like run into, and the puzzles are my favorite, where you'll run into like a treasure chest, and then the Cryptmaster will open it and he'll say things like, you have to ask him questions like, what does it taste like? And he's like, oh, it tastes slimy, and then you're like, okay, what could this be? Like, all right, what does it feel like?
That's a good impression.
Yeah, and it's just fun, and then he goes into like, it's smooth, or it's, whatever the case is. And then you have to guess what it is. Like, you think you get like 4 or 5 questions you can ask him, and then you have to guess what it is. And if you get it right, then you get those letters that fill in for the word that you're trying to uncover for your character. And it's just such a unique game. And then there's a card game in the game, and the card game, like I said, you should just make that as a game.
It kind of slaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At first I didn't get it. Game. I didn't get it at first. I was like, what is going on here? And then I was like, oh, this is cool. So there's different characters that you compete against. You can actually go against a Cryptmaster too. And like, you have to, it's been a while since I played it. Do you remember how the card game works?
The cards all have words on them, and you can play them, and like each letter just on its own does damage.
Yeah.
So if you have like a 4-letter word, you're doing 4 damage. But like every round there's like peak like letters, and if you hit those, you act for more damage. And you can collect more cards depending on the cards that you play. And it is just a really cool, it's hard because it's sort of the inverse of how the rest of the game has worked.
Yes.
But it is such a fun game to play that, like, I forget what the name of the card game is, but you, in order to start playing with anyone, you just type I think it's whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah. I think the game is called whatever.
Whatever. So you just go up to everyone you can possibly find and type in whatever and see what happens.
And sometimes they'll play, and then sometimes they won't. But yeah, it's such a cool game. And so when I was talking about, when I interviewed them and I asked about like, how do you, like, when you're thinking through like all this stuff, because like the Cryptmaster is saying all these words, right? And they literally just read through a dictionary of every word with, like aardvark, and just started like going through the list. And it was really fascinating to hear that. And I asked, they said this happened during the pandemic, and I asked the question, like a lot of the recording was during the pandemic, and I asked, would this game have not been made if it wasn't for the pandemic? And he said that's an interesting question, because of the fact that they were isolated and they had all this time to do all this reading of all these words, right? But yeah, it's such an interesting
and it's
game.
not just words you would find in a dictionary either. Like, some of the funniest reactions you get from the Crypt Master are like slang words that you just type in to see what happens.
Yes.
One of my favorite was his reaction to Riz.
Oh.
Uh-huh.
Oh, okay.
And I'm like, how did you had to not only sit down through the dictionary, but then you had to sit down and like, okay, what are all of the words people might use?
Yeah. It's crazy.
And sometimes there are no reactions. Sometimes it's like, why did you say that? But like startling amount of time, there is an actual reaction to what you are saying.
Oh, it's such a good game. And the drawings are really good too, because like it's this pencil, like it reminds me very much of like when you're a kid and you're drawing your own, well, at least maybe I don't know, maybe other people didn't do this, but like I drew my own like Dungeons and Dragons maps, right? And like, and you just take the black marker and you're just kind of coloring it in, and you're doing and kind of scribbling it in. Their art is much better than my art, but it reminds me very much of like a Dungeons and Dragons like homebrewed type game. And it has that very feel to it. And then the voice acting is so good in this game. It is so good.
So good. It's so good. You're constantly like the objective you're trying to hit is to get out of like get to the world above, essentially. So you're just continuously going up and up and up levels and trying to figure out how to get out. And I'm sure that the necromancer that brought you back from the dead has no reason to leave the world of the underworld.
No. I mean, it's all just good. And that's the other fun thing about this game is that you are playing the bad guys. You're playing not good people.
I mean, one of the first things you do in order to save the game, you have to desecrate a shrine to like the life goddess. Like you literally have to desecrate her shrine.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah. And then but some of those puzzles are really hard too. And just it's fun. It's such a there's just so much stuff I could talk about this game. But it's such a fantastic game. And I know it. I've seen a lot of people talk about it. I just, if you haven't played it, you should play it because it's really good. So
it's very good. So, yeah, like you said, there's no other game like this.
Yeah, and it's just the amount of effort that they went into to put this game together is unbelievable. So one last thing I'll say about that. Can I just quickly? It was funny when I was talking to them and talking about the voice of the Crypt Master, and he talks, and you could hear this on the podcast, but he talks about how he used to do voices for his reading to his kids, like, at bedtime. And one of them was this Crypt Master type voice. And I just thought that was really, funny, like, because how the people came up with it.
How cute is that? Yeah. It's like when your kids grow up, they will have this game and have that voice for the rest of their life. Yeah. And that's a very sweet thing.
And he wasn't going to be the voice actor, actually. He wasn't going to be the voice actor.
That would have been foolish.
I know. But he because he wrote the game and then he wanted to read a couple lines and he really wanted that role. But initially that he wasn't going to be, they were going to get a voice actor to do it. And the other voice actors are very, very good. But I can't imagine this game
without the Crypt Master.
Without the Crypt Master. That's so good.
Yeah.
Okay. Your fifth game.
Okay, so I'm looking at my list, my like short list, and I'm gonna have to make such a hard decision here to decide what to shout out because there are so many good games that have come out just recently. So I'm going to err towards recency bias, and I am going to shout out, thank goodness you're here.
Oh yeah, this is another game that's on my list that I need to play. There's a lot of games on my list that I need to play.
It's literally, I think, the game that I am going to be playing on stream tomorrow.
Oh yes, you are.
Yes. Roger's like, you will.
You will. I've seen the votes. You will.
Oh, it is so funny. It is funny in a 360 kind of way. It is funny visually. Every single part of this game is a visual gag of some sort. Either it's what your character looks like, the situation they are in, something on the wall, logos written somewhere, like anywhere you look is hilarious. Especially the art style being this lovely hand-drawn kind of very cartoony looking. It is visual, sound wise. It is very funny. Constantly, people are talking around you. Most of the time, I don't actually understand the innuendos. A lot of the times, I catch them, but sometimes because they're so British slang, like I'm like, okay, I just don't get what you're saying, but it sounds bad.
Yes.
So-
Yes. I think Matt Berry does a voice in this game too, right?
Yes, he does. It feels funny. Like I don't know if that will translate. I don't know how to explain it exactly. There are only really 2 buttons to this game. Jump and slap. It's really
all
it's
you
a
need
funny
in life,
gag.
honestly.
Yeah. So like that's how you get through everything. So you're like slapping around inanimate objects, breaking things, pushing things off the sides of things. If you come up against people, that's how you are interacting with them. You're slapping them. It's just the silliest thing.
Yeah.
And it's got a mixture of like British humor. It's so Monty Python. So it's a lot of just absurdity. It's a lot of under the radar kind of, this is actually quite silly, but like played kind of straight.
Yeah.
It has the elements of straight up humor. Obviously, you're slapping people, and that's very funny. It has situations in which you are so freaked out that you're like, I finished a meat fever dream, which is like, it's kind of horrifying, but it's really funny.
Those are the worst, though. I just want to tell you, those are the worst fever dreams to have. That is a true thing.
You will go through this and you will know. But it's just, and it's also situationally funny because you are playing as like a salesman. They never quite explain what it is you're doing exactly, but you have a meeting with the mayor. The meeting isn't for another couple of hours. So instead of just waiting in the waiting room for a couple of hours, you go and you walk around this northern English town. And anytime you walk into a new scene, someone will turn to you and say, "Thank goodness you're here," and like some sort of ridiculous.
That sounds very British,
problem.
though, doesn't it? Sound very
like
very Monty Python, like you said, like situational.
And it's just like and you're a character. It just this is like okay, like I walk into a butcher shop and they have problems with their meat and they need me to beat the meat, like it's just layer of layer and layer on top of funny.
Oh my gosh, I gotta play this game.
And yeah, it's so good. And I think I also want to point out how clever the developers are because there are gags on top of gags and they don't counteract each other. They're very good, but also because of the humor of the game, you cannot stop to sort of explain things to players because that would sort of bring down the hilarity of the vibe. So they manage very cleverly to always get you to do exactly what you need to do, even if you don't know exactly what that is. And that is a hard thing to do. That is a very hard accomplishment to design a game in which you do not explicitly explain anything to the player. And that it's
part of the
such
joke.
a recipe.
But that's part of the joke, right?
Yeah, it's part of the joke because it's like, this can't be what oh my gosh, this is what I have to do. So making sure that people don't feel lost, don't feel frustrated, like that's a really hard thing to do when you're not explicitly communicating with people. And they manage it, and that's a very like a lot of people will talk about the humor, and it definitely deserves that, but the design skills here are very, very good. Just being able to do that. So I am shouting out, "Thank goodness you're here" as my final, so far, best games of 2024.
Nice. So for my last game, I have a couple too that I want to choose from, but I think I'm going to go with a game that wasn't probably on a lot of people's radar, and I really enjoyed this game, and it's a roguelike rhythm game. And
interesting.
When I first played this game, I was like, I'm not sure. not sure if this is for me. But then that was the demo, and then I was offered a review code, and I was like, okay, I'll give it another shot, right?
Okay.
And this game is called Beat Slayer, and I just want to show Jill. The audience can't see this except for Jill, but this is really cool. They sent a cassette tape of the game or of the music, but it looks like
Do you have a cassette
no,
player?
but this is the best part. No, I don't. It's actually a USB. Isn't that cool? And it has all the music on it.
Oh, that is cool.
So it takes place in this dystopian Germany after the fall of the wall, and this guy kind of takes over, and Dietrich, a very German name, and he basically outlaws like music and like makes everything like miserable for everybody. Yeah. And your brother, you're this character, and your brother was kidnapped by him and his henchmen, this guy's henchmen, and you have to go through these levels and basically defeat these robots but through the beats of music. So, being on the beat, she's listening to the headsets and this music's pumping through, and you have to play this game with headsets. I mean, you don't have to, but it's much better if you do.
But like, it's kind of the purpose of the
exactly.
game, yeah.
And then your attacks do better when you're on beat, and it's just, and then you can get better scores when you have a combo going on with all your beats. And it's a roguelike game, so I mean, if you're not a roguelike fan, this is not going to be up your alley. But it reminded me a lot of like Hades in a way, in regards to you can pick up different weapons and you can see the paths. If you go to different paths, you can like, oh, I can get this weapon here, which will augment my kicks, which is actually something that I want to use, and blah blah blah. And you can pick up new weapons and such. It's really good, and the art is really good, and the music is fantastic. It came out earlier this year, and it just didn't come. Like a lot of people just, I don't know, fell off the radar or whatever, but it's really good. I give it an A when I reviewed it because I really enjoyed this game a lot. So,
yeah, I was looking at it. It's got 93% positive of all time on Steam. So it looks like you're not alone. People are liking this game.
It's good. It's Beat Slayer. The music is fantastic. And the art is really good too. And the game it plays really well. But it's actually apparently this game is Jill, I'll just show you the back of this. I don't know if you can see this.
No.
But it says slay the robots, slay the beat, F Dietrich. It's very good. So I don't know if they're actually from Germany. I think they might be, actually, the developers. I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, check that game out.
I'm looking at it right now. Maybe I should go check this out. Heck yeah.
I don't know. I don't have a Steam Deck, so I don't know if it's Steam Deck.
Playable?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine it would.
What would push you over the edge to pick up a Steam Deck?
Money.
So if there was like a huge sale, essentially.
Yeah. There was one before, and I'm really upset with myself that I didn't. There was a really good sale, probably middle last year, and I am really upset that I didn't buy one. I mean, I should have bought one, and I didn't because
I think I did pick it up during that sale, and I really love my Steam Deck, but I really want there to be like a Steam Deck Lite.
Yeah.
That's really what I'm waiting for. I want to be able to hold this thing, and it's chonky.
Yeah.
It's chonky boy.
It is. I mean, so our friend Sebastian has one, and he brought it to PAX West last year, and he's like, you got to get one. And I was like, yeah, I know, I need to get one. But it is really bulky. That thing looked really big compared to even my Switch. It was like much bigger than my Switch.
Oh yeah,
so
much bigger, much heavier.
Yeah,
I think the thing that it is good for is like lying in bed or lying on the couch where you have support.
Yeah.
I can't imagine like going about and like holding it while I'm like walking or something.
Yeah, agreed. But that is on my short list of things that I want for sure. So, all right. So that was the best game so far. That's
many great games to come.
Many great games to come. Which we'll have you back later on in the year to talk about those other games, and we'll compare them.
I'm sure.
We'll compare them, and we'll see which is what now is on our list.
What finally makes the final
cut. Right. The topic I wanted to talk about do you have time? Do you have time for this topic? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's go.
The impact of streaming and social media on indie games. So
yes,
I gave you a couple ideas to talk about, and this is the topic that we decided to discuss about. So I want to talk about things of like, how does the platform of Twitch and YouTube change things, and how has social media influenced it, and even I have some ideas, but I guess I'd talk about even strategies for indie developers, how to leverage some of these platforms as well. So I'll start with you though. Like, how has streaming and social media impacted indie games?
I think it's such an interesting question because the Indie Council that came out today, I actually got a little bit into my thoughts about social media, but just talking about streaming in general. Some of the most successful indie games of recent memory, like you think about Among Us, is such a great example for this. Among Us came out like 2-3 years to absolute silence. No one knew what it was. People were not playing it. And it would have been, under any other circumstance, just a game that had its fan base, but didn't break into the wider consciousness, even in the indie space. But then I think it was probably during the pandemic is really what pushed a lot of what streaming went through the roof. People were trying to find things to play together. And so it was kind of tripped over by these bigger streamers who were trying to find ways to connect with their audiences and other people. And then, of course, Among Us is now one of the most financially and like audience-wise popular games of the indie space. And you cannot look in any way at the success of this game and not attribute it in some ways to streaming, because people were able to see it and to see it played. The amount of games that I stream that people who are in my audience, and the people who are in my audience are people who are plugged into the space. These are people who are paying attention to indie games, who have seen me play a game and go, oh, I might pick this up now. And it's like, it's wild the amount that you can write all of this stuff, but somehow, and like you can talk about it on a podcast like this, and you can try to impart your enthusiasm and interest. But until people see the game being played, it doesn't, a lot of the times doesn't click, or they just don't put together. Like when you talk about a game that is one half fighting dungeons, one half like making friends, like that can be a really hard game for people to kind of wrap their head around. So if they see you actually playing it, they're like, oh, I get what this is now, and I want to jump into that. And indie games, because it is such an innovative space, it can be really hard to explain to people what these games are. Like it is very tough to talk about what Cryptmaster is and why that is fun. But when you get into, I've seen like so many different people streaming this, but like Janet Garcia was one of my favorites, where the chat is coming together to try to help you figure out all the puzzles and to come up with the words. And now there's a sense of community, and it's one of the better streaming games because of that reason, because it brings people together like that. So there is no denying that the rise of streaming and the rise of social media is also contributing to the continuous expansion and booming of popularity of indie games. And I say, I want to switch over to social media. I say social media is a part of that for a large point of this is because one of the major problems for indie games and indie developers is marketing. Marketing, it takes money. You have to know the right people. And if you're the kind of person who's just like, hey, I just wanted to make this little game, I'm not someone who knows the people who like knows how to send things out to outlets or to like make my game sound cool. having a social media following where you can just put up a picture of your game and a link to the Steam page, and you can pick up people from there, like, is 100% influencing things. And what I pointed out on the Indie Council up now, you can go check it out, is it seems to me more and more that indie developers are leveraging this to put out huge news instead of waiting to have to pay someone to be in some kind of showcase, to have to, even if it's a free showcase, to jostle and sort of share the spotlight with other games, especially if it's like a situation where it's a mixed AAA indie showcase where the AAA crowd is typically not looking for an indie experience. It means a lot that they can just throw their news up on a random Tuesday. Nothing else has got oxygen. So if it's a big enough announcement, like Crypt Custodian just announced that it's coming out August 27th, then you get outlets covering that because there's nothing else going on at that moment. Instead of like, hey, it's E3 and Crypt Custodian is coming out, but also so is the next God of War and the next Assassin's Creed. And like, you know, when you're an outlet, there is an obvious choice. Like, you can't cover everything, and the clicks are going to go towards the bigger games. So it is a very interesting tool, but also twist it a little bit. It also gives players a direct line to developers, which can be good and could be very bad. If you are the kind of person who's just like, hey, I'm just a person and I'm like typing programming in my off time to make this little game, and suddenly people are like threatening my life because they don't like this feature that I created. Like, that's wild. You know, even I have seen a very noticed uptick of developers exploding in popularity and not being able to handle what that means as a person. Because with popularity comes people who are not even people who are like threatening or mean in any way, but like, as anyone who's put out any creative endeavor, it always kind of stings you when people are like, well, this is dumb. Obviously they're being lazy for this. Like, people say things kind of off the cuff, or like the only thing they talk about is like criticizing, like, oh, this pixel isn't the way it should be, or the audio could be so much better. And even if they think that these are helpful comments, unfortunately, as people, we tend to air grievances much more readily than compliments. So as the indie creator, it might look to you like you just got 5 million new followers and 4 million of them are saying something critical about your creation. And I think that is also part of this uptick too. You have to keep both of those in mind because it's a hard place out there. And yeah, I think there is a lot to dig into as to how social media, how streaming, how the cult of personality that is inherent in both of these things intertwines with indies. In a way, indies have always sort of been about the cult of personality. Like, the early indie hits have developers that you know the name of.
Jeff Minter, like, for instance, right? Like Llamasoft, like that's
Eric Barone is Stardew Valley. Like, you know these people because part of it is you selling you.
Well, you know, it's interesting because that was the thing I was thinking too, right? Is this direct communication with developers, whether it be on social media or Discord. Like, to me, I always thought that was interesting. Like, hey, we have our own Discord. And most times, most people on the Discord are like fans of the studio and they like want to support the studio. But every once in a while, you'll see like, blah, 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 blah. I don't like this or whatever, right? But even Steam like has a direct communication with a lot of these indie developers just by able to communicate with them and leave messages and stuff. And Mike Strollart, the creator of Below the Stone, I thought it was really interesting because I interviewed him about social media and getting feedback right around that kind of stuff. And he said, he had one person give feedback, I want more. There's not enough here. I want more of this. And he's like, he spent 80 hours. He looked at the thing, at the comment. He spent 80 hours in this game. And if that's their comment of like, this is not enough, I want more. I'm like, great. Just wait. We got more coming for you. Right. But it takes thick skin though, to be able to take some of those comments and be like, oh, cool. Like you didn't like the hitbox on that. Well, we'll fix that and we'll make it better. Right. But,
and just that comment in particular, that example, can you imagine having put in 40 hours that week, 50 hours, 60 hours doing backbreaking work of like, no one's going to see this. No one's going to appreciate how, and then the first comment you see is, I want more.
Yeah.
Like that's gotta be, that's a great example of someone who doesn't mean to be mean in any way. And they're not, but like, it's that sort of thing that will really needle into you. And there was a great back and forth between the Manor Lords developers, and I forget who the other developers
you talked
were.
about that on the indie console.
Yeah, on this show, about this kind of exact thing of expectation and people wanting more, and what that means and how that drives a successful or not successful early access, and whether or not that is a healthy relationship to have, and healthy expectations to have, both as a player and as a developer. Very interesting topic to go into.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of positive things, right? I think also there's some things like that I've seen that I do get. I'm like, oh, like for instance, like I'm going to say this because I don't mean to sound mean. I'm not going to point out anybody, right? But there are people that create content just to be mean and just to create, and like that is like they're mean spirited kind of, right? But that's their persona, and it's a weird thing,
right?
Because
it's not even that they don't believe it necessarily. It is literally a strategy for getting attention. That works a lot.
And this is the weird spot with people that do like streaming, right? Is that if you want to be kind of, I hate to say this, but if you want to like make a name for yourself, you got to do something kind of outrageous.
My cat has as graceful as ever tripped into my lap.
But your cat looked very much like, this is what I wanted to do. This is.
I'm very happy with the attention I'm getting. Exactly. So this is fine.
But yeah, there is something about the cult of personality in the creators, in not all creators, right? But I'm saying, but there is something about, if you want to make a name for yourself, you got to do something that might be out crazy. You have to like create a persona, like almost being on stage, right? And not everybody does that, because I don't. I mean, I don't know. My wife says like you do have a radio voice versus your normal voice.
Yeah. Right. This is not the way that you would talk to me in person.
Correct.
Like I have had that opportunity before.
Yeah.
So there is a difference. Yeah. I think Greg Miller talked about this a little bit one time, which I've found it very, very insightful in the way that he normally is, and his persona, the Greg Miller of Kind of Funny, is not a deeply insightful person, but like the Greg Miller who is a human being is super insightful and super kind and considerate. And it is interesting. And I think also we talked a little bit about this back when I was at Game Informer, that I think for the best people, the personas that they have for content is who they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's just who they are 110%.
Yeah. And I think that's probably where I think about with me, right? Like I'm not different. I just know that I'm on stage, right?
Yeah.
But it's still me.
Right. But for these people that you're talking about, these like sort of hate monger type, they will go on and they will be spitting and frothing at the mouth and angry, and then like as soon as that camera goes off, it's like, well, I don't know, I don't care what that is, whatever that was.
But the outcome of that though is that they could be taking a game and playing that as part of their persona, and then also could possibly shine a bad light on the game because of that as well, right? And I would think that this is probably one of the hardest things of being an indie developer is like you want your game out there, but you know that there may be you're allowing people
in bad faith,
faith, right? You don't know, right? And you're just, even if it means in being a content creator or being journalist, right? Like we do get review codes. And content creators also get codes for streaming and creating content. But even if they just bought the game, there could just be in bad faith to show like, oh, look at this, look how dumb this is, right? Or whatever the case is. And that must be really hard and challenging for developers. Not only just the back and forth on social media, because there's that, ability to hide behind things on social media, but just even the fact that you, like, I hate to say this because I don't mean it this way, but you can't control the narrative, right? Like the narrative is what it is. And
this makes me think of something. And I've never created like a game. Like I don't have that kind of patience, but like I did earlier in the year a big list for small developers who had worked with ID at Xbox. It was called 30 Under 30 if anyone wants to go check it out. I had the most baffling comment I've ever had in my life. And I've had meaner comments and I've had worse faith comments. But as far as like where the narrative goes, I'm so glad no one picked this up as like a thing. But the person had looked for 2 seconds at the Indie Informer's socials, which I didn't start the Indie Informer as a separate social media thing until I had been doing it for a while, maybe a year or two.
Yeah.
So it's not a very aged social media page. So this person looked at my social media, looked at the page's social media, and was like, oh, so a site that's only been up for a year that lives somewhere in the Bay Area is putting up an Xbox list. Convenient. And it was like the whole point they were trying to make was maybe Xbox themselves had concocted for a year this indie site that had like somehow the grand scheme was to put out a list of all the top creators under 30. And I was like, you laugh at it, but it's like, that's the sort of thing that like if a certain demographic of the population caught hold of the wokeness of that, might have come after me personally, and then you can't stop that train. So it's like, I understand that that's the situation you're thinking about when you're thinking the narrative that happens you have no control over. And a lot of times I could not have guessed that was going to be anyone's reaction to putting out a simple list of celebrating indie developers. So for something that simple to get that kind of weirdness, to have something as deep and layered as games usually are, you can imagine the wild stuff that people just throw out there, either in bad faith or just because they're like journalistically illiterate and they looked at something for 2 seconds and I think there are a lot of people who unfortunately think the worst possible thing you can think of is correct and is if you believe that you are clever. And I had a little bit of that when I was younger, like teenager. It's like, oh, this must be for this reason. Like, and I broke myself of that and to be a little more optimistic about life. But it is a widespread, like, critical thinking is not encouraged in a lot of ways on social media. And spreading, if that particular narrative had caught, that could have been a very sensational story. And sensational is really what populates on social media. So you can only hope that my cats are being silly. You can only hope that the sensation comes from your game and how sensational your work is, but you can't promise that that's what people will try to sensationalize.
That's interesting. I never had anything like that with Gamerheads, which I'm thankful that I haven't. But I also think that might mean like, hey, you made it, congratulations. Right. But yeah, it is interesting. And I don't know, I mean, it's an interesting thought too, that I think video games, movies, and TV, I think all kind of fall into this, like, this could either be good or bad press kind of situation with social media, right?
Yeah.
You don't see this with art. Like, I don't see everybody saying like, oh, the Mona Lisa, let me tell you, I don't think she's smiling at all. I think she's being stuck up. You know, like nothing like that ever happens. Like, or, you know, like, or books even for that matter. I don't, maybe I just follow the wrong social media.
I wonder if it happens in books that are ongoing currently.
Oh, sure. Like, yeah, like series, maybe.
Yeah. Like Game of Thrones or something, which is still ongoing, and people are constantly saying stuff about that.
That's true.
Yeah, I think there's with the things like games and like any kind of art that you take in, especially with games though, because it has, unlike anything else, an element of you in it.
Yes.
There is an invitation to make it yours. There is a piece of you in it. So there is a stronger perhaps pull for people to believe to some degree that they have that right to whatever the next thing is, you know, whatever is. If it's an early access game, like, I have the right to say what I want out of this game, because in some ways I've paid for early access. I've dumped my time and identity in some ways into this game, so I have the right to say what I want out of it. I want more than 80 hours.
Well, I just want to riff off of that for a minute, because, like, to me, like, because I worked in software development, and in my current role, I kind of do, but it's different. Like, it's still development, but it's not quite the same, but it's still development of content. But the hardest thing in software development, and this is, so I'm going to get a little nerdy here, right? Software development.
I'm ready.
Okay, ready. But you have different roles, and one of them being a product owner. There's a person that's called the product owner. They own the final say for the dev team of whether things are prioritized, what goes in, what doesn't go in. But if you didn't have a product owner, you would get all these users just coming to you with all these crazy ideas of like how to build something, right? And this happened to me where I had one of my QA people come up to me and say, you know, actually the user said that they would rather have us do this because I'm like, but your user is not my stakeholder. And therefore I'm not going to just listen to this person. I understand that they would like this, but we're not going to build that because that's not what we're building. Right. But it takes, but when you have social media and if you don't have a strong, like dev team or even personality, right, to weed out the noise, it is hard because you're just going to get bombarded with a bunch of stuff. And it's just like, what do I pay attention to? Like, is this a real concern? Should I actually implement X, Y, and Z because that person said I should? I don't know. It's a weird thing. Sorry, I got a little nerdy there, but that's
It's 100%. No, I get that. That is what we are talking about.
Yeah.
Is there is a lot of, I mean, in some ways, understandable interest in feeling of ownership for people, but I think game making in particular is such a opaque process, and what happens during it, and for a lot of the industry is very secretive.
Yeah.
So it does kind of promote that as well. So you get a lot of people who are like, just hit that button for better graphics, you know? And it's like, I am certainly not well versed in the making of games. I know enough to know that it is difficult. I know enough to know how the process works for some ideas about marketing, some ideas about like talking to press and dealing with gaming conventions and that sort of thing. I know enough to be able to see some things as like, there's no way you could do that because of this and this and this. And sometimes those comments 100% are because people are not there. There's a curtain, and it's an intentional curtain that's put there. And no one could be expected to know behind it. And for those, I try to address those and be like, okay, I see that you're asking a question. Let me explain what that process actually looks like. I get that actually a lot. Not just the space for covering games is also very secretive. So I get that a lot for what it's like to be a journalist. And I try very hard to be authentic and talk to people about what I can. But there are people who are just being not great people, who are just like, well, I could do it and jump. I'm like, well, then
do it.
Then do it. Yeah. Go right on ahead.
Nobody's stopping you. Yeah. Yeah. So I guess what kind of advice would you give to a developer trying to navigate these platforms?
I think first, the advice I would give is not to the developer, but to the populace, people at large, is to, even if I went into a little monologue about one of these situations where a developer got really popular and said a very ungracious thing, which I took as resulting from the stress and the bombardment of criticism that this person was not expecting. But as a fan of the game, just wanting to, be a part of the community, could look at this person being ungrateful and being ungracious and be hurt by it. So I think what I would say to people at large is to treat everyone with the grace you would want yourself if you were saying something that was perhaps ill-advised. Compassion and empathy is almost always the best first reaction to anything. And I am not great at this all the time. I try very hard. My initial reaction sometimes can be very upsetting, very upset. And then I try to step back and say, like, is this a place where I'm not giving enough compassion to another person? If it's a situation where a CEO is laying off a bunch of people because they want to buy another yacht, then they can go jump off a cliff. But if it is a indie developer who's like a solo or a small team and barely making it by, and they've had a bad day, even if the thing that they have said, is like, hurtful or harassment or something along those lines, then there's a slightly different path to take. But if it is just a reaction to mental health, like, perhaps just giving them some grace and some space. And for developers, or just basically anyone in the creative space who's putting stuff out, I don't really love telling people not to let it phase you, because it will. Because you're human. And that's, I think, a lot of times especially women in this space, women in my space and in the journalistic space, will get told not to let it bother them. But like it's going to, and then when it does, it makes you feel bad because I should be able to let this slide off my back, and it's not sliding off my back. I mean, take a break if you need to. Like, you don't have to do anything besides what you are doing. It is your project. If you need to take time, take all the time you need. I will wait forever for any of these games that people are waiting for. Like Silk Song pops up into my head. Like take your time if that's what you need to make it work. Like, I am desperately excited about Eric Baron's next game, Haunted Chocolatier. Take all the time you need for that. Like, I will be excited about it if it comes out next week or if it comes out in 5 years. I will still be here waiting for it. So that's the best I can do.
Yeah. I mean, I'll echo that. I mean, for me, I try, and I'm not good at this always. I'm going to admit this, but I try to think positive intent, right?
Yeah.
But there are times where I don't have positive intent. I don't think positive intent. And then I have to remind myself, think positive intent. Like, and sometimes I'll see through like some rant or something. And then it's like, okay, there's something else going on in that person's life. Right. And I need to think through that as well, because maybe that's not how they always act. And I know I've had my moments where I'm not the most cheerful, happiest person in the world, right?
We don't match the person we would like to be. Yeah.
So like you said, like, give them grace, the same grace that you would want people to give you, right? I'm going to say for content creators, and this I feel bad about saying this because of what you just said, but I'm going to say this because this has helped me. And I think it's a little bit different than just letting it roll off your back. For me, what has helped me was separate my self-worth from what I create. Because, even if Gamerheads fell apart and I never did that again, like, I still have felt self-worth, right? And if somebody says your video sucked, I absolutely hate it. Well, okay, but me as a person, like, I can separate myself from what I create. And I know sometimes I'm like, yeah, you know what? That wasn't my best creation, or whatever the case is. I was tired and I just finished up whatever I needed to get done, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard because, especially when you create things, because a lot of yourself goes into that. And it's not always the easiest thing, right? But for me, it took me a long time to separate what I do and from who I am. And that's really, it's not easy, but.
No, especially if you're someone who's the indie informer and it's just me and the space I am in. That is a difficult thing, especially, that's especially good advice for people in this particular horrific realm of layoffs. And when you get laid off, because it's almost a when and not an if, unfortunately, of a lot of people can't separate that, and it becomes a matter of self-worth that they were laid off. But like, I think the really funny thing about opposing advice is it's sort of a like early bird gets the worm and good things come to those who wait situation, because both of those things can be true in different situations.
Right. Because it and some of it is luck. Like, let's just some of it's luck.
Oh, so much of it is luck. So much of it
being in the right place at the right time, right? But yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it's like I said, that's easier said than done. And I would never tell anybody like, oh, just let it roll off your back, because like what they feel is legit. And I would never tell anybody not to feel what they feel. But I would say you are worth more than what these people are commenting, right? Like, you are a valued person outside of what you create. So
I know you're being very serious, and a smile just came across my face. But like, this has become very therapeutic. I think we're working out some issues here. I hope everybody listening, you're just letting
that's right.
I understand my childhood now.
That's right.
I can let it go.
I will say this, it took me like 46 years to come to this conclusion on my own. And there are days where it's hard for me even. Like, I'll tell you, there's stuff that I create that I'm like, I don't want anybody else to see this. Like, I'm just going to create it in the little corner of my own creation, and then I'll just put it out there, and then I'll just walk away and like just pretend it doesn't exist or something, right?
Yeah. I think there is some form of me that uses that as a protective shield of like, no one's gonna look at this and throw stuff up, and then when someone comments on it, I'm like, no, someone's seen it.
I know. Well, you weren't really supposed to look at that.
This is okay, I'm sorry.
But yeah. Anyway, do you have time for just like 10 minutes to talk about PAX?
I've got 10 minutes to talk about PAX, and not a minute
I just want to make
more.
sure. Like, before this episode, I said, Jill, let's keep this to an hour, and now we're reaching the 2 hour.
No, but what did I say, Roger?
You said
I was
this will
like,
be all
if we
your
go
fault.
over an hour, it's going to be my fault.
No, you said it's going to be your fault, Roger. I'll never forgive you.
I'll never forget.
I'll never forget that you made me stay on for 2 hours. So we're going to PAX West. This is what's kind of fun, exciting about this is the second time that we're both going to PAX West.
Yes, and I wasn't sure I was going this year.
I know.
So,
but you are.
And then I always here's the thing, Roger. It's probably not the best move for me to go to PAX West, but it's so hard to say no when you're like, "Hey, do you want to be on this panel?
I know.
Hey." You start getting emails from like PR, like, "Hey, do you want to see this new game that's coming up?" Like, yes, I kind of really do.
Yeah.
And then everybody else you see is going to PAX, and you're like, I want to see other people.
I know.
too.
That's the hardest part, is when you see other people and you're like, I would like to see those people too, because that's fun. But yes, we're going to PAX West. So last year was your first PAX though, right?
Yes, it was.
So what would you tell people to expect?
A lot of walking.
Yeah.
I think there will be less walking this year.
I hope so.
I don't think there are going to be 2 different buildings. I hope not. But yeah, basically what I said about PAX after I went, PAX is a very consumer focused show. So you can expect the pageantry that goes along with that, versus the industry focused stuff that I'm used to. My cats are doing something wild. I'm trying. Hold on. Everything's fine. They're just playing.
Yeah, well,
they're playing on top of the desk, so it's knocking everything over.
That's what cats do, though.
Yes, they're having a great time.
They're like, this shouldn't be here. Why is this here? Knock that off.
I had to pick this up. I don't know if you saw me pick this up earlier.
No.
That's a part of the wall back there.
Okay.
So one of my cats has torn that off the wall and was playing with it. So that's fun.
That's what cats do. That's what they're
so cute.
So
they're adorable. I love them very much.
One of my favorite things about PAX last year was your reaction to all the cosplays. I remember
I would look at that over there, Roger. Look at that. We were
talking about some game, and you're like, "Oh my god, did you see that costume over there? Oh my gosh, how did they do that?" I can't think of the salesperson in the Zelda game. What's that person's name?
Oh, the happy mask salesman.
Yeah, the outfit that they had was insane.
That's so good. The amount of work people put into I don't have that. I don't have that skill. I don't have that patience.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely brilliant. It's one of the fun things about it's one of the things you don't get to see during one of these industry things, but it's so cool. Good job, cosplayers.
One of the funniest ones last year. I don't think because that's a funny thing. I don't know if people know this or not, but I'll see you and I'll be like, "Hi, Jill." And we walk by and sometimes we'd grab food together, right? Or we'll be in the media room at the same time. But a lot of times we're just going from appointment to appointment to appointment to appointment.
It's just escalator crossing. Hey, good to see you. Hope you're not dying or anything.
But last year there was this guy that walked in and he had the sword. And of course, security didn't like the fact that this guy had a sword, and this thing was huge. And the guy, he said, the security guard's like, "You have to give me the sword." And he was like, "Don't break that. That's a $200 sword. Don't break it." And he's like, "Don't worry, I'm not gonna break it." And I was just thinking, man, that's a lot of money for your cosplay there. Yeah.
No, it's the amount of effort you have to put in and the money you have to throw into it. I'm like, if I'm throwing that kind of money in, I don't want any effort. You know?
Yeah, no kidding. I just want it to be done, and just that's it.
No, but it is it is a very interesting thing to be a journalist and part of the media crew in one of these shows. I think that I would go about PAX a very different way if I were just going there for fun. But as media, you're on your feet constantly. I think one of the things that makes it so hard is that it's not set up for journalism or for media. So a lot of the times you're just cutting in line in front of people and you're standing at the booths and not sitting anywhere. And I'm like, oh, I just walked 50 miles to get here. I would rather be sitting right now. And it's a lot of like back to back. Okay, I'm done. I have to run and go to my next thing. And maybe you'll have like 5 games that you've played back to back and maybe a half an hour if you're lucky for eating. So you're trying to eat while simultaneously like writing down your notes so that you remember things, because it's surprising how much you forget about your experiences, even like the next day, because the next day is going to be stuffed with a whole nother round of game to game to game. And you're not going to remember that. Oh, I'm definitely going to remember that funny thing that developer said about that one thing.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I would say like the thing that I've said this before on this podcast, and it's the thing that makes me feel the worst, but it's not my fault. But we have appointments. Like we get emails and saying, "Hey, we want you to come check out this game. What time can you meet with us?" And like we fill up our schedule, right? Like I have a calendar. I fill up like, here's this time. This is the time. And
right. Religiously, because if I don't immediately write down, I've offered this time slot to this person, I'm just going to lose it. And today, this is such a fortuitous time to be talking, was like, for some reason, just the kickoff of all the PAX West emails. So whenever you guys are watching this, it's August 1st. As we're recording this, and PAX doesn't happen until like the end of August, the beginning of September. So this is about the time period where we are planning our schedules. And I promised myself that I would book myself less, but you know who has got 2 back-to-back days already?
that happens to me all the time too. But I'm actually bringing another journalist with me, which I'm super excited about. And it's their first time at a PAX, so it's going to be. I told her name is Trina, and I said just don't overbook yourself.
Trina.
Yeah, like
you know what? Also, we need to hit up the dumpling place because it's really.
I know that's what I hear. Like, and also so we're actually staying at a little bit farther out of town, actually, because it was way cheaper than staying. That's the other thing. Like
that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, we should go. Like I'm gonna. Well, you're gonna be there a day before me, so like I'll be there all day Thursday.
But even if it can just be like when we have breaks, like let's try to go in, because like sometimes the breaks too are not like, oh, it's noon, it's time to go to lunch. Like sometimes you have just booked that time. So it's like, oh, it's 2:30 and I haven't eaten yet. So
yes, I know. And that's weird because because your body, like for me, I'm just like, oh, I didn't eat yet. That's crazy. I can't believe I'm not hungry.
And only when you think about it, then your body kicks into like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry.
Because up to that point, I'm like, I'm fine. Yeah, I didn't eat. Oh, I got to go get some food. What's going on?
And then once you sit down for the food, then you realize how much your body has taken that punishment.
Yes. But then you're like, I don't have that much time to eat, so I have to buy something really small so I can like scarf this down real quick so I can get back on the floor. But yeah, the part that I feel bad about is that because we have back to back and we have to make our meetings, right? Like, and we only have a short amount of time with these games. It's not like we have a long time with these games.
Right.
there are times if the developer or the booth doesn't have a place for media, they will kick people off, and I hate that, but that's what it is, and I'm sorry. I'll just say that. I'm sorry. So if you see me at PAX and you're playing a game and they kick you off, I'm just going to say, I'm just struggling to say I'm sorry, but that's
it's like, I hope that what happens afterwards is they're like, we're sorry we had to kick you off, here's extra time for you.
I don't think that always happens, though.
I don't think that always happens, but like, I'm sorry for anyone who's been in that situation. But yeah, it is not just about the fact that let's say I've got like 30 minutes at the show. If I wait for 5 minutes for this person to finish, wait for 5 minutes to get the kind of spiel about what's happening, then they've got 5 minutes to kind of wrap up, to talk to the developer a little bit. You're only really playing the game for like 15 minutes. And you have to create content based off of that, and a whole write-up, and the people who were involved in making that appointment for you will check in to make sure you are doing that. So like, you do really have to get your stuff together, and you have to get it together very quickly, and you have to be ready to go and be on and be thinking the whole day. I think that's one of the harder things to explain about, like, it's really fun because you're going back to back and you're not waiting in line for any of the games that you're playing, and that's always really cool. But you are from morning to night, and oftentimes when you're on a panel or later, all of your social time is almost always also business time. So you have to be on and thinking constantly, and you don't get to stop for basically the whole week. So it is such a whirlwind of, like, it's a magical experience. It is so much fun. It is rough on your body. It is rough on your brain. But like, there is no electricity like it. And there is no exhaustion that you will feel like it as well.
Yes. It's magical. I like it a lot. And it's fun to see. I think PAX East was the first, like, this past PAX East was the first time that, like, the first PAX I went to, I didn't know a lot of people. Like, and I think this is actually kind of a fun time that we're in right now, because like all the people on that panel that we're on, like, I know all of them. And it's really fun, right?
It's fun.
Yeah. And it's fun.
But that's also why you go to these things, right? Because you start out with not knowing anyone. And then you just stumble into a room of all of these people you know, and you appreciate their work. And all of a sudden they are meeting you, and they're like, oh, there's a person here that exists and we should be doing more stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that's really fun, right? But I did also tell, like, my staff, I said, just let you know, I'm a different person at these events than I am, because I will admit this, they know me as a curmudgeon-y older guy, and I said, but I'm a lot more like happy and like social when I'm at these things, and they're like, that is not you.
My energy level is turned up to 11.
Exactly.
Like, you can see me on a podcast and I have this level of energy to begin with. This is sort of my baseline. Can you imagine me turned up to 11?
But
like, Roger has seen it, I'm sure.
Well, that's I'm a very introverted person. That's the hardest thing for me, and I really push myself. So I'm very extroverted when I get to know you. Like we saw each other, and like, I know you. I've been on the podcast. You've been on the podcast. We talked like a lot, right? So like, it's like, I know you, and I know like people from the Boss Rush Network. I know all those people. Like, but if I'm like in front of people that I don't know, I'm just kind of like, hi. I'm usually the wallflower in the back, right?
I'm sort of the opposite. Like, if I know you, I'm like, okay, you're gonna forgive me for anything that I'm not gonna do. If I don't know you, I'm like, hi, I'm Jill.
Yeah, see, that's not me. But our friend Sebastian is very much outgoing, and like, I tagged out my first PAX. I just tagged along with him because he is very outgoing and just and he's a wonderful person. I love Sebastian. Unfortunately, he won't be there at PAX.
Lovely human being. Oh, that's a shame.
But he'll be there at East, he said. So I'm looking forward to that. To wrap this up,
I need to go to East at some point.
You do. It's different than West.
It's different.
And
it has no dumplings.
It doesn't have dumplings, but They're moving it to May, which is being nicer weather too.
Yes, that will be
Which will
very
be really
nice.
fun.
To not intersect with GDC.
Yeah, yeah. Can I tell you real quick? I know I said 10 minutes. Oh, I still have a couple minutes. Can I tell you a real quick funny story about East? Real quick.
Yes.
So this has nothing really to do with East except for that it happened in Boston. It was an evening. It was a long day, and I get out. It was like 6:00, so I'm leaving to go back to my hotel, and it's just downpoured.
Okay.
I mean, it's just downpoured rain, and I'm like probably like a 20-minute walk from where the convention center is, and I was like, I should call an Uber because it's downpouring rain. But then I thought, I'm from Wisconsin, and this is nothing. Like, that's lame. Like, you can walk, because also the Uber cars were a lot more expensive because of the
of the
convention and the rain and everything, right? So like the prices went really high. So I was like, I'm just gonna walk. So I was walking, and I'm just from head to toe, just sopping wet, right?
I'm just imagining you as like a kind of puddle.
Oh my God, that's what I was. And I'm walking, and I can't see anything because I wear glasses, and the water's splashing against my glasses, right?
Yeah,
so I can't see. And all I hear is this young girl yelling, "Help! Help! Oh my God, somebody help me!" And I'm like, this is it. This is my moment. This is my origin story. I'm going to step up and save this person's life, right? And then as I got closer, she just wasn't wearing a jacket, and she was with her friends, and they're out drinking, and she was just getting wet. And that's why she was screaming bloody murder, like, help. And I gave them a look of like, are you kidding me? And they're like, oh, sorry. And then I get so at this point, I'm just like, oh, I don't know what's happening anymore. So I get back into my hotel, and I'm on the elevator, and I'm just standing there, like you said, a puddle monster.
Dripping.
Yeah, just dripping. And this woman gets on the elevator, and she's going to PAX 2. And she turns to me, and she said, is it raining outside? And I said, no, I just shower.
No,
I just take a shower in
yeah.
all my clothes. That's how I do. That's how I roll, right?
Yeah.
So, what just as we wrap this up, what tips would you give to like indie developers as at the conventions?
It's weird because it's hard. You want to attract as many people as possible. But the way that you would try to attract people is ways that turn people off a lot of times. And especially if it's someone journalistically like me, I try very hard to not make eye contact when I'm going from place to place.
Me too.
No, because it gives the impression that I am available to go over and to talk about the game.
Yeah.
And sometimes I do leave spots open specifically to be able to look through booths and everything like that.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I'm rushing from place to place. So if someone is pushy and trying to push me into their game, I am going to walk away with a very bad impression of that.
Yeah.
So developers, as much as possible, do all your legwork, do all your connecting work before the show.
Yeah.
If you see a bunch of if you're having people, if you're just trying to get people's attention, probably still don't be pushy and grab them over, but I don't know, find something fun for them to come over and have some kind of activity that they can do. Have seats, have seating.
Yes.
Seating will get you people to your booth.
Yes. And I know that's not always the easiest thing, but man, if you can have people sit down and just rest for a few moments, that's huge. I would say, I know this is hard, right? Because you don't want to be pushy. You don't want to be like a salesperson, right? But you also can't just sit there. And I saw that at East, where it was a developer, and they just sat there and nobody talked to them. Nobody. And they didn't make any attempt to try to convince anybody to look at their game or anything. And I just thought, I'm assuming the booths are pretty expensive. I don't think they're cheap. And you have to do something. You have to do something, right? Sometimes it's just simple presentation things too. looking professional and having professional signage and stuff like that. Like, just, I know it sounds weird, but it goes a long way, because like I see that, I'm like, oh, cool, like they actually have their stuff together, versus like somebody that's just standing with the Steam Deck saying, here, come play my game. I'm like, okay, all right. Did you try? Like, what's going on here? So I don't know.
We wish you luck either way.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, before we head out though, because I have 4 minutes. I said 10 minutes. So I have 4 minutes left, I think.
Okay. 3 minutes and 20 seconds.
Okay, I'll hurry up. How can people follow you?
Quick, Roger,
I'm trying. How can people follow you on social media and like follow your streams and check out what you all do?
Oh, yeah. You can find all of my work at theindieinformer.com. It's the easiest place. It also has links to all of the places you can be following me, including like Patreon, social medias, Twitch, all of that jazz. If you would like to follow me personally on social media, it is at Finruin, at FINRUIN. But the Indie Informer is indie_informer on Twitter, and then Indie Informer everywhere else, because of course someone else is the Indie Informer on a lot of things. If you want to follow me on Twitch, I do stream every Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific time, and I am playing a lovely game that my community has picked out for me, and so I usually don't know what it's going to be until the day before, or the night before usually. So yeah, come stop by theindieinformer.com.
Nice. And listeners, you can follow us on social media at Gamerheads Pod. You can also follow me at Nintendorage. You can go to our website at gamerheadspodcast.com. You can follow our streams. We stream on Wednesdays at 8:30 p.m. Central Time on Wednesdays at twitch.tv/gamerheadspodcast. And that's about it. So, Jill, thank you so much for taking time. I know this is a long day for you, so I really appreciate you taking time and joining me.
I'm actually I feel really accomplished right now. I think in 2 minutes I'm going to crash and burn. But at this moment, I'm riding the high. I'm like, I did it.
You did it.
I ran the gauntlet.
You did. Well, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time and joining me. This was a lot of fun.
I always have fun.
Good. I'm glad. And listeners, thank you for taking time to give us a listen. If you like what you hear, leave us a review. We want to hear. Leave Jill a review. She wants to hear what you have to say about her stuff as well. Like, that helps us grow too, because that helps us know what you like and helps us grow. So with that, everyone stay safe and game on. Bye.
Bye.